Welcome to Drinks Coach. Damn it. I've just done a shot of this. I did almost an entire show. And then I thought the battery had run out, so I stopped filming, and I hadn't. So I'm just doing it again from scratch. I fully believe these things have to be done in one entire recording. It has to be stream of consciousness. So hopefully I'll do as good a job as I think I just did. Again, Vinesack, all lowercase. If you want to talk to me about anything, really, that's my Twitter and my Instagram handle. Anything about the show, basically, all lowercase. Drinks Coach UK. Just write that out. But you're watching YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe below on tablet or phone, whatever you're using. If you're on telly, I think you can still subscribe. Okay. So, whew, I'm just now going to act as if I've not done this before. Hi, welcome to Drinks Coach. On Tuesday, we did a fantastic lineup of Cabernet Sauvignon from South Africa. One of the greatest tricks that South Africa ever pulled was teaching Bordeaux how to make better value Cabernet. It's fantastic wine. Today, I think I did start the show with a little caveat, and that was, I think the Cabernet Sauvignon needs blending. And with the exception of one wine here for a different reason, these are all Cabernet blends. And yeah, I was right. You know what? As much as single Cabernet can be absolutely amazing, I'm inclined to go for the one that's had the salt and pepper, the little something, the little bit of seasoning, the bit of extra, which just embellishes the greatness of the variety. But most of these wines are Cabernet dominant. They're from all over South Africa. This week, I'm fulfilling my promise that it's all about trying to get you to drink South African wines. These wines come from exclusively two people who very kindly sent in some quite expensive wines on the risk that I wouldn't mention them at all. And in return, I've pretty much mentioned all their wines because they're very, very good. Daniel Grigg at Museum Wines in Tarrant Hinton, and Gerhard Perold from Perold Cellars, who brings in wines from all over, North-South Wines Import, KWV. Gerhard Perold's basically a made family guy at KWV, and he sells their wines to consumers directly. And we will see that in due course. So, we're starting off with this. This is called Lynx Vino Tinto. Not very imaginative, is it, really? And I'm looking at that going, oh, it's exciting. It's the 2017 vintage, so I started getting slightly more excited. It's from Franschhoek, which is really groovy. I've talked about that a lot. I talked about it last week. Little French quarter, just by Stellenbosch. Slightly wetter, slightly cooler. The wines tend to have more of a Bordeaux lyricism about them, if I'm going to be a bit wanky. So what's in it? It's a Cabernet blend, but it's not a Bordeaux blend. But I mean, it would count as one, I think, in competition. Because the first two varieties, the majority of the wine, are from Bordeaux. So you've got Cabernet Sauvignon, and a great variety I'm not sure we've talked about, called Petit Verdot, which is used increasingly so in Medoc particularly for Bordeaux wines, has done for 100 years or so, but increasingly so as global warming increases. Petit Verdot creates a very nice, as I was told at the Institute of Enology at Bordeaux, which was my alumnus, it grows a belle robe. It grows a beautiful colour, a bluey, purpley density to a wine which otherwise might be failing in colour in a cooler vintage. Well, thanks to global warming, they don't have cold vintages anymore. And Petit Verdot turns out, if it gets enough of a suntan, tastes flipping delicious. In fact, Petit Verdot tastes of huckleberry. Yes, that's a fruit. What does huckleberry taste like? I remember as a kid with Mum and Dad going through the woods in southwest of Sweden, where you'd find wild blueberries. Blåbär. Was it Björnbär? Mum, you might be able to help me here. Oh, by the way, Mum, if you're watching this, everyone, please, round of applause to my mum. My father would have had his birthday last week, but sadly passed away, coming on 3 years soon. We all miss him. Mum's at home in Sweden watching my shows, still supporting Liverpool, being the cool mum that she is. She buys wine from a company in Germany that actually delivers to her door, so she doesn't have to get on a bus or get somebody to go in their car to the Systembolaget, which is the government shops in Sweden. They deliver to her door, and they're doing a really good job, so well done, Caprio. And they're picking some pretty sexy wines from South Africa. This is one of them, Mum. 2018, though, so they're not the same vintage, but I think that the wine... maybe from a hotter vintage, it may not be as good, but This wine's a year on. I think maybe it'll taste better if you put a few in the rack. But Mum, you can buy this in Sweden for €9.65 a bottle. What's not to like? Is it any good? Well, the other two varieties in here are Mourvedre from Bandol or from Châteauneuf-du-Pape, or Rhône, chocolatey, again, blue fruits, and Shiraz. A little bit of Shiraz in there, just a dollop. Now, in the Platter Guide, this got 3 stars. And I imagine that was probably about right for when they first tasted it. But I imagine, if it's 2017, Platter tasted this more than a year ago. Had we tasted before the book was published, and then we're 2018 vintage in the marketplace, so we're probably a year or 2 behind. This wine is aged very, very, very well. And I think if you can buy this stuff for less than £8, it's a banger. Very gastronomic. And part of that is because it's been made in a way which doesn't kind of restrict it. It's lots of different unusual varieties which somebody's worked out work quite well. They've got posher wines above this. But it's been fermented in concrete fermenters, old school. Because current wisdom shows us that maybe we threw the baby out with the bathwater, and these techniques will work rather well. It softens the wine, gives it a harmony. The wine then goes into barrels, and in this case, none of the barrels are new, which is music to my ears. A wine that's ready to drink when it's young, but clearly ages, I think in this case, for 6 to 7 years. Very nice. Okay. Right, so we're 6.5 minutes in. That's better than last time. Okay, so now next, Tanagra. Tanagra? Not many people out there probably speak Afrikaans. I don't think it's even an Afrikaans word. Tanagra means old, large. It's kind of a wild fig tree. There is a plant in the Fynbos, in the wonderful floral kingdom of South Africa, called Cape Fig. And the fruits are slightly fig-shaped, and they taste like a cross between a Morello cherry and a wild strawberry. And they're amazing. That's what I think they taste like anyway. Lovely sour strawberry taste to them. But this is actually named after an actual fig tree, I believe, a wild fig tree. And it's from a region called McGregor. I'm afraid I had never tasted a wine from McGregor before, but it is a proper region. If you drive a whole 3 bloody hours out of Cape Town Airport going east, over the St Lowry's Pass, past the dams, underneath through the hills and the mountains, to Robertson, which is a good 2.5 hours drive. Then you have to drop down south for another 20 to 30 minutes. You're in McGregor, which is right on the edge of a phenomenal nature reserve, in fact. And they've had this vineyard registered as a single vineyard site. And it's a Merlot vineyard. Quite ballsy to make a Merlot dominant blend. I mean, look, I've been drinking Merlot all my life, and call me an old curmudgeon, but most Merlot's crap. Most Merlot's boring. Everyone likes to drink it because it doesn't offend anyone. I like to call it the lift music of grapes, or the tofu of grapes, because it has texture of a sort. But if you add stuff to tofu, it tastes sexy, right? Well, they've done that. So we've got this Merlot, 75%, and then there's half and half, Cab Franc and Cab Sauvignon, filling up the other 25%. And it works very, very well. If I think about all the Merlot dominant blends that I've liked, or Merlot wines I've liked, La Conseillante, magical. Vieux Chateau Certain, Petrus, yes, I've had a chance to try that a few times. Le Pin, even more so. They all have something in common. They all cost about 500 quid plus, and they all come from within 5 miles of each other in this freakish little area called Pomerol. I'm not even that big a fan of Saint-Emilion next door, unless it's one of the really, really, really good ones. So anybody who's trying to mimic a wine which I don't like in the first place, I think, ugh. But this wine is fantastic. It's Merlot with Cab Franc and Cab Sauvignon, and like I said, the tofu has to be marinated in something, and it makes a massive difference. Merlot is all about texture, and the wine in the mouth is juicy and drippy, like an old Rioja. It's kind of got that rainy softness to it. There's a little bit of oak, but none of it's intrusive. It's not lots of new staves of wood. It's got a kind of a slightly, refill quality, banana-y spiciness to it. What a wine! This is about 15 quid. Rightly, in the Bible of wine in South Africa, Platter's Guide gave it a good value award. 4 stars, 15 quid. Done very, very well for itself, I think. It does have a characteristic which I need to to draw you to attention, which makes it very, very food worthy, but also means this isn't a wine you want to stick in your cellar for 20 years. It's balsamic. That is to say, when you taste the wine, it has that wonderful, when you taste balsamic vinegar, old balsamic vinegar, it's like tingle, 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 like pomegranate molasses. But there's a slightly vinegary edge to it. And there is certainly, we don't call it vinegar in the wine trade, there certainly is some volatile acidity in this wine, which maybe by mass, maybe only 0.5% or half a gram per litre. But what's done here is actually made a wine which was very dense and very thick and pulled it apart and opened it up like a souffle. And this wine is lovely now. Tastes lovely and delicious, but that volatility just dries the wine up at the end, which is really sexy. But that dryness means that I think given time, this wine will dry itself out. So this wine is absolutely delicious. It's a wine you should buy. You're good for 2 to 3 years. You'll be on to another vintage by then. But what can I say? Incredible wine for the money. Moving on. We're now on to Orchestra, made by Isel van Blerk, the fine wine senior winemaker. Not taking anything away from the other geniuses down there at KWV. You know who you are. This is Orchestra. Again, Gerhard Perold, great-grandfather, literally created Pinotage. And at KWV, they revere everything about that story. Beautiful packaging. If you ever see his packaging, and you've seen a few bottles like this on this channel already, reds and whites, they don't make any bad wine. None. Ever. Guaranteed win. If you see the words The Mentors on a wine list, and you can't think of what else to buy that one. It's going to be great. Okay, so this wine is really fantastic, but it also feels like infanticide. It feels somehow like it's a deck of cards that's been opened, a fresh deck of cards with all the right cards in, but we're not allowed to spread the cards out yet. You can only see the top one. It's almost like it's got so much to reveal. Sexy, polished, no expense spared. The tannins are exquisite. Some of the wine is whole bunch, some of it's not. I don't think it's all been picked. There's a sense underneath. There's a little bit of whole bunch in there somewhere. I don't know which variety it is. It's been aged in expensive oak. Exquisite. And from a vintage which, frankly, I think is going to turn out to be an absolute superstar, if you like your wines aged. Their top wine, Gerhard sells it, is called Paarl Tribentum 2017, which is a Pinotage Cabernet blend, believe it or not. £70. When they relaunched this back in 2001, I think it was, or 1998, around that time, it was already the most expensive wine in South Africa, £1,000. But quite right too. If you're going to make a wine that costs £70, you're making a statement so bold as to say, give us any wine in the world at £70, we're that good. Most people can't justify £17, let alone £70. And do you know what? Paarl Tribentum 2017 is the only South African wine I've ever given 100 points to. It's a perfect wine. It tastes good now. It will taste good in 40 years' time. I promise you that. But that's what you pay 70 quid for. And do you know what? This one's only 16 quid. Or £17. 16.95. Almost the butt of my own joke there. This wine is going to be fantastic in time to come. 2012 was showed to me recently by Isel at a tasting in London. Absolutely divine. I can't remember sitting next to you, but we completely agreed how delicious the wine was. But in 5 years' time, the 2017 is going to kick the 2012's arse. Okay, so moving on to another fascinating wine. We're doing okay. It's only 13 minutes. Can you tell that I've done this before? Because I'm getting a bit pissed. Right, okay. Can't wait for dinner. We're watching Phantom Menace tonight. You have to be drunk for that. Okay, so Natte Valleij, which means Night Valley. P.O.W. That sounds funny. It sounds like prisoner of war. Yes, it means prisoner of war. This is, oh God, I can't remember the name of the family. What's the name of the family? This family bought the estate in 1969, I think it was. They're making some pretty special wines there, actually. But when they first arrived, they created a horse stud. Vineyards were ripped up, gone. They reared horses, probably made a few money out of horse stud. There's a lot of stud farms in the Stellenbosch. And once some of them have been put to pasture and they sold the horses, they then replanted. And I imagine they saw the excitement of the winelands tourism growing, seeing the quality of the wines in this particular region going through the roof. And I think probably post-apartheid, when things became a little bit easier, about 94 onwards, they started planting some sexy wines. But this wine is just extraordinary in a million ways. The family's called the Milner family. How could I forget that, being a Liverpool supporter? How could I forget that? Okay, so the Milners, right? I think it's Andrew Milner might be making the wine. Again, could be making it up, but I'm pretty sure it is. He makes wines in a very, very non-interventional style, which is really wonderful. So he's right up there with the hipsters. He cares about the land he's growing on. And he's also making really fantastic wines. This is a Cabernet Merlot. They do have a project going for a grape variety, which is kind of the workhorse that created the entire South African wine industry, called Cinsault. And guys, if you're watching this, I would love to try your Cinsault project, because I'm a bit obsessed with Cinsault at the moment. But this wine is made from Bordeaux varieties. 75% Cabernet Sauvignon, 25% Merlot. Why is it called P.O.W, you may well ask? In 1943, an Italian POW, prisoner of war, was actually kept and looked after at the estate. And scrawled on the wall, POW, BT, 27/12/1943. It's 27th, so the day after Boxing Day, 1943, long time ago. And they decided they called this wine after that moment in the history of the estate. This estate was built in 1775. It's a Cape Dutch estate, beautiful, and is underneath one of my favourite hills in the region. It's a beautiful, almost looks like it was made artificially, called Klapmuts. Now this is in the town of Klapmuts. Klapmuts, for those people who don't know, is Afrikaans for pith helmet. Have you ever seen Carrying Up the Khyber or something? Those helmets that look a little bit like the old English Bobby's helmet. Looks like a breast just coming out of the ground. The old Raj kind of English army hat. That's what a Klapmuts is. And there's a hotel in Klapmuts called the Klapmuts Hotel. And on a Friday, all the people that were in the wine trade, I imagine before mobile phones and smartphones and trackers, would say, no more mobile phone message, no more signal. And then they'd just turn the phone off. All head to Klapmuts Hotel. I'm afraid in those days, it's just a thing of those days. I think women had to drink outside. There's even bells still outside where it goes, if ladies want to drink. That's changed now, I'm very pleased to say. And there's a guy inside that's the bartender called, I think it could be Danny or something, or Devon. He's been the bartender there for 74 years. Yeah, and he's still there, shelling out gin and tonics to all sorts of crazy people. It's the most extraordinary place. My wife and I both visited, and it's the most characterful bar in the whole world, maybe. Anyway, so this is in Klapmuts. They do have accommodation there. Wonderful accommodation. This wonderful old 300-year-old house with 250 years old. And it's right on the sort of like the kind of crossroads between going to Franschhoek, Paarl, Stellenbosch. It's a fabulous place to plan a trip. So I'd strongly recommend that you might necessarily book there if you ever have any plans to go on the best wine trip of your life. Now, this wine has been aged in Botte, what the Austrians call Stück, what the Italians call Botte, which is an oval barrel, about 2,000 litres, maybe bigger, for 3 years in old wood. And that's how Brunello in Tuscany, or how Barolo in Piemonte is aged. And I'm wondering whether this whole Italian story, the fact it's from a drought year like 2016, where these wines tasted very Tuscan, whether this is all a very cleverly planned exercise to make me think about Italian wine. But do you know what? If you like Brunello and you have a wallet my size, not the size of Cornwall, then you might find that for 18 or 19 pounds, so that's what this costs, you're drinking wine which is super Tuscan good. Just from a point of view of referencing to historical moments in my life and understanding wine, we've got these expert wines made like this by Azelle. And they've got a wine like this, which just shouts individuality and authenticity. That if you have a steak on the braai I can't imagine a better wine than this. It's like, the thing about Brunello and Chianti, which are two great wines made from the same grape variety, which around the world generally just makes really ordinary wine. It needs to be in the right place. It's like wine, it's like cabernet, it's like pencil shavings and spice and cabernet and cassis. But it's like somebody's dashed Liam Perrin's Worcester sauce into the drink. And that spice means that all the seasoning you need with a steak is a bottle of P.O.W. That's all I'm saying. I absolutely adore this wine, so I've sent my wife out to get some steak, and that's what we're going to have, with some sautéed Swiss chard and some new potatoes and the Phantom Menace. Okay. You enjoying yourself? I hope you are, because I'm bloody well am. So, we've got two more wines, and these wines are from, this is very exciting for me, the otherworldly 2015 vintage. They're both proper Bordeaux blends, and they couldn't be more different if you tried. Ebony and ivory lived, yeah, etc. Not very woke, I know, but you'll see what I mean in a minute. This is Holden Manz, two guys have an estate. They brought in one of the greatest consultants in South Africa, who was trained by the very special Michel Rolland. I say that because he's made vineyards which were struggling, that were really, kind of not doing anything special, into world famous vineyards. He is one of the greatest wine consultants in the world in terms of, if you're looking at profitability and cost per bottle as your markers of success. Michel Rolland's the most successful wine consultant of all time. They made a film about him, which I've not seen. And Holden Manz, a protege of this guy, is their consultant. This wine's made in Franschhoek. Again, we've mentioned that at the beginning, the French hook, where they have the most extraordinary, slightly wetter, slightly more kind of Bordelais climate than Stellenbosch. This wine is very good. It's very good. It's very plush. It's very Michel Rolland, if I'm going to put it that way. He's made wines all over the world. Clos de l'Oceite in Argentina, the velvetiest Malbec you can imagine. His own estate in Franschhoek, Chateau de Fontenille, or Bon Pasteur in Pomerol. These wines, the kind of icon DNA of Rolland wines is plush, juicy, soft, velvety wines. It's like a crushed black velvet coat. Nothing about his wines tastes cheap, which is wonderful, but they're almost flattering to deceive. They don't have the same sense of place, I think, that some other wines do. So, you've got a wine here, £29.99. This is 30 quid of anybody's money. It's a really terrific wine. Got 4 stars in platter. I think it probably deserved 4.5. It's really pushing 5 stars, this wine, and absolutely brilliant. And the Cabernet that we did in the show last time was brilliant. But an estate that's going places, and I'm sure they'll sell out to the Yanks and the Japanese and stuff like that very soon. Extraordinary wine. But for nearly half the price, you can have this, which is so psychologically opposite. It's warts and all. It's, I don't know, it's more me. I've always been the one that fancied the girl that had the kind of the mole, or the one that stood up for herself. I just I don't look for the perfection things necessarily, and this is for 90% of you out there, right? And this is for us 10%. Okay. We're finishing with a wine which I kind of, in so many ways, kind of pulls all of this together. Okay. Benguela Cove Collage Red Blend. I tasted it for the first time with my wife on a visit to South Africa. I think it was the second year I judged the Veritas Awards. So we're going back to 2016. We're down in Benguela Cove with the winemaker. Shout out to Johan Fourie, who was my panel chair at the Veritas Awards, because I was chosen to judge Bordeaux blends with Johan, with Willem Pinard, respect my friend, Hermanus Peters Fontaine, long story. And here we are, tasting wine from an estate which is in a cove on Walker Bay, which is where in spring, where all the whales come and pod, and it's the most extraordinary natural site. There's an incredible golf course. There's an amazing restaurant packed full of modern art. There's this winery, and then he's got his vineyards in this place which produces silky, very cool climate, otherworldly, almost Bordeaux tasting. Very similar to Margaret River in Australia. Very similar to Sonoma Valley, I think, in California, maybe. But he makes extraordinary wines. And he used to be the head dude here at KWV. Izel is now making the Mentors range, which is something that he used to do. And I think if you love that wine that I loved on Tuesday, 2 days ago, which is the Mentors Cabernet Sauvignon 2014, I think that was his last vintage there. And this, Benguela Cove Collage, was his first vintage here. We tasted it when the bottles weren't even finished. I think it was just a tank sample, or it had just been bottled. And he said, tell me what you think. And I just had this sense, along with Villene and Pinard's wines, that these wines are going to age into something very, very special. And I understand how exposed it is for a winemaker to be standing in front of journalists from all over the world who've come to an estate where he's been in charge for 1 year and he's gone, this is all I've done so far, what do you think? Because you're kind of putting your heart on the line, and people who don't understand how wines evolve, or have never made wine, or haven't bought wine in a serious sense, but are just armchair athletes, just go, I like it, I don't like it, may well not understand where this wine is. We're in this wine tasting room. It's howling with wind. Like it's going to be blown away. It's like Swiss Family frickin' Robinson. And then he pours a glass of wine to me. I knew it would turn out great. And the wine was just like a suitcase full of parts, if I'm honest. It was, yeah, you could see the Cabernet was really good quality. You could see there was some primary fruit here, and there was a lot of Malbec in the wine, which gives it a clovey note, a bit primary. But now, drinking this wine, fair play to you, my friend. Johan, this is stunning wine, okay? The estate that he makes wine at is owned by an English woman who made a ton of money, I think through an agency with nurses, I think it was. But she's bought this estate, you know, and woman of great captain of industry in this country, and I'm very sorry I don't remember her name. It's very, very annoying. I don't remember anybody's names here. I think it's because it's the second time round. I remembered the first time. Yeah, I might even edit that in. Who knows? But anyway, Collage blend, Johan Furry, 2015, Benguela Cove. Smells like Lairville Barton, okay? It smells like a second growth Saint Julien. Oh, it's fucking brilliant. It's brilliant. How much? Guess. 16 quid. Gerhardt, if they're not flocking to you tomorrow, then nobody's watching, okay? But that wine is fantastic. Next week, it's all going to be Yodelalehu, Austria. I'm done. I think I need to lie down. I think it's time for bed. I've had to menace my arse. Okay.